Alright, in this part 2 of our little series on fixing noticeable harsh shadows, the first one was pretty easy, but this one is going to, I think, take just a little bit more effort. So first of all, in this case, I'm going to go directly to color range and try and select this shadow. And as I move the slider, again, I have to be a little careful. If I go too far, I'm going to basically select everything. You notice how it's selecting part of this area in the background. Now the other thing you can do is go a little bit on the low side and then either use this eyedropper with the plus sign or just hold down the shift key and basically try and add in some of the areas that it didn't get. Something like that. Maybe just a bit more on this side here. Okay. And I think I'll just move it up just a hair. And click OK. Now, as I did in the first part, I'll press Q for quick mask just to see if there's any glaring problems. I think what I might do is take my brush tool and just sort of paint over. My brush is still set to 55% opacity, so I'm just making this not quite as selected perhaps as it was. And then I also will do the same thing we did before, just add a very, very, very slight Gaussian blur. Let's just look at the edge of that. Something like that is pretty good. And then press Q again to come out of quick mask, and then we'll press Command or Control J to put that on its own layer. Once again, press Command or Control U. So this part is all pretty much the same as the first method I showed you. I'm going to lighten things up considerably and then push up the saturation to try and match the same kind of range of colors. That's pretty close there, but here's one of the problems that I didn't face last time, which I am in this photo, is that there's a very noticeable kind of a stucco pattern on here that's not visible here because the shadow was so intense it's basically covering that up. So I need to attempt to fix that. So I'm going to go back to the background layer and just select a portion of that background, go to my edit menu and choose Define Pattern. And we're going to click OK to that. Now this is where you'll have to play a little bit, but now I go back to this layer and hit a new layer above that, and I'm going to choose Fill. Here's my pattern that I just created. Everything else I'm going to keep normal. Now don't worry too much if it initially looks like a very noticeable, you can see a darker area, because we're going to do a couple of things here. First of all, we're going to lower the opacity a little bit, and then more importantly, I'm going to position my mouse between these two layers, hold down the Option or Alt key and click so that now the pattern is only applied, only visible inside that area. Now I can start to push the opacity back a little bit, and if it's still, like in this case, it's still a little noticeable on this layer, I can go back to my clone stamp tool. Let's change the blend mode to lighten, because I just want to get rid of this little area here that's quite noticeable, and just kind of, oops, put my opacity back a little more. Actually, I think I'll do it the other way. I think I'll go to normal and just lower the opacity a little bit, so I'm just doing a very small amount of blending in here to try and make this look a little less noticeable. And as I often do in these movies, this is the part where you need to do more work than I'm going to have time to do. I just want to show you the basic idea. But I think you'll agree that's looking pretty good. It's not too bad, actually, considering the amount of time it took. So that's really the added twist, is if you have done the work where the hue saturation does a pretty good job of making the colors match, then one of the other options to see if you can't grab some kind of a textured pattern, put that on a layer, and then blend it in a little bit to make it look that much better. So there you go, a couple of different ways to deal with harsh shadows in your photos. Now of course those shadows are caused by too much direct sunlight, and if I was clever I would have dealt with that while I was actually just taking the photo. It would have been much simpler. But that's the way it goes. I'm Dave Cross. I shall see you next time.